about next is the modern domains of psychology. So where are we going now in 2020? What we find at most Canadian universities with a large psychology department is we don't have too many psychoanalysts in Canada, although there are some. We tend to always see in our departments some people in the following areas. We definitely see people who specialize in neuroscience or the study of the biological structures of the brain or other types of biopsychology. We definitely have people that are studying cognition, and whether that's cognition and memory, cognition and decision making, or even things like cognition with computers, how we interface with computers or computer science. We also tend to see Canadian psychologists in the area of social psychology or personality psychology, looking at how we interact with groups, interpersonal awareness, and more of that cultural psychology slant. Another area is industrial organizational psychology, often called IO psychology, which looks at the psychology of business or the psychology in the workplace or how governmental bodies interact. There's also health psychology, which tends to overlap sometimes with sports psychology in Canada. And this is how our mind and our body and our stress can interact with our whole body and our body performance. You might see a lot of this in kinesiology departments as well. And then we have developmental psychology, which can look at young children or infancy or adolescents or older adults. And this is the idea that different psychological phenomena change over the lifespan. We also have things like forensic psychology or criminology, and this is the idea of studying crime scenes, studying judges or the justice system or juries. And there's much more than this, of course. It would be very difficult to make an exhaustive list. But at this point in this unit, we have discussed a lot of eminent psychologists who have influenced where we are today. One thing I want you to check out is the link that has the top 50 living psychologists today. And I want you to think about, if you were to add a psychologist to this lecture, if there's a name that I let out that you would want to add, who would you add?
So now that we have provided a recap for the full history of psychology, let's talk about some modern career paths in psychology. So this is really specific to a lot of Canadian norms. But here in Canada, we can study psychology at the bachelor's university degree level as either an arts program or a science program. Many times a semester, I usually get students asking, what is the difference between studying psychology as an art or a science? If you're at a school that has both, there really is, the only main difference is the electives that you take. If you want your electives to be chemistry, physics, computer science, and math, or if you want your electives to be sociology, political science, history, economics, that's really the difference. There's still the same level of prestige. And after you do a bachelor's degree in psychology, usually you can go on to work as a research assistant or a research coordinator, or you can get a job in government doing things with data or data analysis. If you continue on and get a master's degree, either in arts or in science and psychology, it's usually a 2-year research-based degree. Sometimes there is a 2-year clinical-based degree, of course. Then usually what you can do is have a bit more of a senior role in looking at different types of data analysis. You can go into government or the correctional facility and be more of a data analyst or a research analyst. If you're on the clinical side, in some provinces, I believe Alberta is the last one, you can still work as a clinician or even as a psychometrist. If you go on and get your RN in nursing, specifically psychiatric nursing, you can work in hospitals or outpatient centers working with people with mental health issues and concerns. If you get a master's degree in education, specializing in counseling or school and applied psychology, or you get a master's in social work or even a bachelor's in social work or you're a registered social worker, often you're able to do counseling. And counseling is something you can do at a community counseling center, or you can do at a school or many other avenues. For those people who go on to a 5-year doctorate degree, that could include a PhD, so a Doctor of Philosophy. That could be a research-based degree, or it could be a combination of research and clinical work. Or you can get a PsyD, which is a Doctor of Philosophy, which is a clinical-based degree. This can train you to be a head researcher. It can also train you to go into the academic track, or it can train you to be a clinical psychologist. And then finally, there's the MD, the medical doctorate. And this, after your bachelor's degree, that usually takes about 8 years. So 4 years for your medical doctorate, and then a 4-year psychiatry specialization, you can become a psychiatrist. Now, in terms of the different clinical jobs, if you were to go and become a psychiatric nurse or a counselor or a clinical psychologist, there's many different places you could work. One of them could be a clinical private practice that you open yourself and you charge your clients whatever you prefer. Then there is the online virtual practice. Note, for both of these, you should be registered with the provincial body of counselors, social workers, or clinical psychologists. Then there's also community clinics. This is the idea that you may be working in a nonprofit community clinic that works on a sliding scale for at-risk people. You might also work in a rehabilitation center that works with people who are stroke survivors or they experience brain trauma through automobile accidents or through military activity. You may work in a hospital in an inpatient or outpatient, or you may work in a career center where you don't work with people with mental health concerns, but you match one's personality to different career opportunities. You may also work in the prison or court system, or you may work in the schooling system. Depending on your degree or credentials, you're looking at somewhere between 6 to 11 years of university. 6 would be more at the low end if you do a 4-year bachelor's and 2-year master's, or if you do a 4-year bachelor's, 5-year PhD, you're looking at more 11 years of university. For non-clinical jobs, there's many different types of research jobs, including one that gets a lot of focus, and that is the academic researcher or the professor. So this is the idea: you spend your days writing research grants, supervising your trainees, writing research papers, and going to conferences. You may also work as a private industry researcher, where you may not have to write grants as often, or maybe you do, and maybe your company has internal funds to supply and support your research, and you can continue to publish that way. There may also be government research where you may not be interested in publishing, you're just doing research to help the government or communal or nonprofit organization. You may work as a statistician where you're not the lead researcher, but you may be the number cruncher. And you may also be the data analyst or data manager working with large-scale databases. You may be someone who's a scientific writer who works to help these think tanks to adapt and write things in a technical language. You may also be someone who's working as a research coordinator, research assistant, or research analyst who's not the lead investigator but part of the team. And outside of the clinical and research jobs, there's also many things that an education in psychology can help you with. For instance, someone who is interested in helping veterans or military families or helping with military intelligence, a background in psychology is beneficial. We also know that many people who study psychology go into business, whether it's managing, marketing, or human resources. There's also many people who go into law or forensic investigation, in which psychology can help one to become a better judge or lawyer. Many educators or educational policy analysts also have backgrounds in the psychology of learning and the psychology of learning spaces. Psychology can also help one through understanding coaching or sports or kinesthesiology. In the digital world, there's also social media and graphic design. And finally, lots of different levels of project management in government and non-governmental organizations. So I hope this has opened your eyes to some of the things that you can do with a psychology degree, and it gives you a basic primer of the history of psychology. Congratulations for hitting the end of Unit 1.